So this year, for the first time ever, I actually watched all of the Academy Award Best Picture nominees before Oscars night. I don't know about you, Nick, but it was pretty great to have all of them streaming right to my home.
Yeah, me too. Much to the dismay of some of the critics that I read, they didn't like that they couldn't see all the films in person. They said it took away from some of them, specifically Sound of Metal was cited. But I very much enjoyed being able to sit on my couch and watch them for a very minimal fee this year.
Yeah, it just made access that much easier. So we thought it would be a fun idea to go through all of this year's Oscar Best Picture nominees, give them our ranking, and then predict what we think is going to win the big prize at the end of the night. Quick disclaimer, we are not going to be reviewing The Father today. That one has not come out on streaming yet, but we will give you guys an update with our thoughts next week after that one's available to watch online. So stick around for that one. So Nick, let's just go through these one at a time. Which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with Mank, because that's the freshest on my mind. Would you like to lead this discussion?
So Mank is about the writer of Citizen Kane. Citizen Kane is the AFI's top film of all time. It's a huge classic. It's been the inspiration for so many things, and it is clearly the inspiration for Mank. It's like a behind-the-scenes look at the making of Citizen Kane and also the life of the screenwriter for Citizen Kane. And I think it's important to look at this film with that context because it is very much an homage to Citizen Kane as much as it is about Citizen Kane, which I think are two things that Hollywood really loves. They like movies that are about themselves, and I think a lot of people view Citizen Kane as like the #1 movie of all time. So I think that's why this movie is on the Best Pictures list, more so than any other reason. It was not a bad film. I didn't think it was a bad film. I enjoyed watching it. It's maybe a little on the long side, but that's a personal thing. But I do think that it's strange that Mank is on this list when there are so many new and different and fresh voices on the list. Like, there wasn't anything about Mank that seemed new or different to me. It just seemed like, old Hollywood kind of navel-gazing at itself. That's how I felt.
And I would completely agree. It's an homage to Citizen Kane, but it also cannot exist without Citizen Kane. And that was frustrating to me. And trying to pull it back out of that lens, watching this, it's just a bunch of men in suits talking to manlier men in suitier suits. And it gets a little overwhelming at times in that sense. Like you said, nothing really new. Where I'm putting this on the list is not an attack on the film as much as it is on the Academy for putting it here. I know you guys love films about yourselves being in Hollywood, but there were some other good ones this year, and I thought maybe One Night in Miami, maybe Da 5 Bloods, even a few others could have easily taken this spot. So for me, this film is dead last. And how about you?
I definitely agree. It is in spot number 7, barring watching The Father. It is at the bottom of my list. All right, let's talk about Minari, because that's the one that I watched most recently. And I was really kind of blown away by Minari. I didn't know a whole lot going into it. I knew kind of the basic premise for it, and I knew that there's been some controversy surrounding it because it was nominated in the Best Foreign Language Film category for the Golden Globes. Even though it is an American film, it is a quintessentially American film, I would say, and it was not nominated in the Best Picture category because most of it is in Korean, because the main characters are Korean. For me, watching this movie, it was like a classic all-American tale about, the American family, about, striving for the American dream. I was picking up vibes of, Grapes of Wrath and A Raisin in the Sun, and just a lot of those like classic Americana literature as I was watching it. But unlike Mank, which felt familiar, this one felt new and fresh, like it was a completely different voice and a different take on a story that we've seen 1,000 times, and so it felt new and original for me.
And I would completely agree. I very much enjoyed the bicultural take on that American farm feature, having a Korean family come in there and experience and exemplify what they thought the American dream meant. I thought was a very refreshing take on the American dream, and a very topical thing to come out in this period where we're so much focused on economics and stuff like that. So I very much enjoyed that.
I did want to talk about just how beautiful this film was, because I felt all of these really long, lingering shots of summer in Arkansas. The score was just really dreamy and lovely to listen to. So, like, in terms of the look and the sound of it, I thought it was just a really stunning film.
I would completely agree. Very visually appealing, the whole entire film. Yeah.
So Nick, where would you rank this one?
Minari is number 3 for me.
All right.
How about you?
All right. I have Minari as number 1 for me, because
Nice.
I think this was the one that I had the most like emotional response to, so it's number 1 on my list.
That's awesome. Glad to hear it.
Yeah.
What'd you watch before Minari?
What did I watch? I watched Promising Young Woman before Minari.
Promising Young Woman. Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
All right. So this one, I'll let you lead if you'd like. This one I'm very intrigued because I think we might have different spots for it on our list. So I'm gonna let you start off and get into it.
So Promising Young Woman for me was just a really fun time. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun watching it, even though the subject matter is kind of dark and gritty. But it does feel weird that it is on this list, because it feels so pop culture-y, which is not something that the Academy normally looks at. For me, what I like about this film is that there are so many layers to it. I went in expecting one thing, and that was not the film that I got. I really loved the cinematography again. I loved the look and the style of it. I like that I was surprised by the end of it. I know there's been a lot of talk online about, that twist ending, and I don't want to spoil anything other than that. But that ending was really wild, and I think it is a great conversation starter, because I think there's a lot of things that you can pick apart in the story, in the characters, and that's what I like to walk away from a film with, is something to talk about and to discuss.
And I would agree with all of your points there. I do think it is a good conversation starter. I think it's a good conversation we obviously need to be having. For me, the only thing where it fell short was just that I felt that the risk of talking about that subject matter in a comedy with some of those cast choices, you can accidentally maybe discredit the subject matter. And so I worried about that a little bit. Maybe the things that they maybe accidentally said with some of their choices, that maybe that risk didn't pay off for me. So that is my only thing. But again, nothing technically problematic. I thought the cinematography was very well done. I love those wide shots, that vignetted blur effect. The color popped the whole time, and what they did with the style of the film was very coherent and very focused. So I did think that was very well done. Where do you have it on your list?
So this one is, because I had such a good time with it, because I liked so many things about it, I felt like this one resonated a lot with me over some of the other movies. So this one I actually have as my number 2.
Nice.
I don't think it's gonna win. I don't think it's gonna win. And I'm not sure that it should win, but it is my number 2 pick. Where
Nice.
is it for you?
So this one is my number 6. It is second to Mank to last. Again, nothing technically problematic about the film. I just got a little caught up in the subject matter. So What's next?
Let's talk about Sound of Metal.
Let's do it.
Do you want to start?
Yeah, for me, I loved Sound of Metal. I thought it was a very profound story about sadness, loss, things that keep happening in your life that you're not ready for, and how to deal with them. I thought it was a great film about setbacks, and maybe some that view those things not as setbacks and would like that to be known. But one of the best character arcs I think I've seen in a long time, in terms of very transformational, a full rainbow. I believed the whole thing. I was with him for the whole thing. I thought an incredible performance, and I thought they used the cinematography and the sound design as very specific tools to elevate this film and really make it something awesome to watch.
I definitely agree with that, and I loved all of the choices that they made with the sound design. I love seeing decisions in films, and all of the sound design choices were very clearly decisions. I thought Sound of Metal was just a really powerful story. I was definitely kind of on the edge of my seat wondering what was going to happen next. I think for me personally it kind of struck a chord, but it definitely it was an intense watch, and it was just sort of like it definitely got to me. Like, there were definitely moments that were emotional gut punches throughout the film, but specifically at the end of the film. And I just thought it was a really kind of raw, intense movie to sit through.
I would completely agree, and I thought it did a very good job of dealing with representation of the deaf community in that film. What about you, Julia?
I agree too, and you know, we don't. I mean, I think this is a big year for minority and communities who we don't often see, and who don't often get a lot of, you know, light shown on their projects. And I think the fact that we have so many movies on this list this year from communities, from minority communities, from, you know, communities of color, from women-led projects, I think that is so great. And I think this one specifically touches on a community, the deaf community, that we don't often see in cinema, or rather that does not get the attention like other movies on this list, like Mank, would get. So Nick, where is this on your list?
So this is my number one, actually. Where is it for you, Julia?
For me, it was actually number 5. And again, that's not to say that it was a bad movie. It's mostly, you know, my experience watching the movie, my enjoyment of the movie, and like, would I watch this movie again? Probably yes. But it would be behind some of the other movies on this list. Let's talk about Nomadland.
Let's talk about Nomadland. Would you like to kick that off?
Sure. This was another movie that I wasn't really sure what to expect. Watching it, I'm glad I watched it before I watched Minari, because I think there are a lot of similar like messages and kind of similar things about both of those films. I think they both deal with, you know, what it's like to live in America and be looking for the American dream in a way. But whereas Minari was kind of really focused in the story that it was telling, I think Nomadland was really trying to create, you know, a feeling and a mood. I think it was a definite character study of Frances McDormand's character in that movie, but it's not really a story in the traditional sense.
Yeah, I would agree. This story is a little tough to find there, and normally that wouldn't be a setback for me. Normally that would be the thing that puts it to first on my list. But in this one, I think I got a little lost in: is this a piece on existentialism? Is this a piece on economic disparity. And while I was trying to figure that out, the film ended. And so I was left a little just confused there. And I think maybe I missed some of the majesty. I think maybe if someone would have warned me and said, hey, you know, this film is about the wide shots, it's about the journey, the meanderance through the film. I think maybe I would have liked it a little bit more. But again, for most people, they found this film to be freeing and about a freeing experience, a freeing nomadic journey. And I watched it and I thought it focused on kind of like just how economically restrained that is. And I do want to say, great performance by Frances McDermott. Strong performance. Great female director here, which I love, and I want to see that being put up on these Oscar lists more and more every year. So I did love that about the film. Where do you have it on your list?
This one is number 6 for me.
Okay, and this one is number 5 for me. So.
All right, let's talk about Trial of the Chicago 7 next.
Yeah, so I mean, this one, I had a lot of fun with it. It's a breakneck pace, and it's kind of just this political film that just so happened to be extremely relevant when it came out last year in the Times. And I just thought it did a really good job tying in all of those political events in the past and showing their shocking relevancy to today, whether that was a direct intention or not. And I do understand most of the beef that I've seen with this film, which seems to be directed at Sorkin and maybe the filmic cliches that he likes to convey. But I would say this film is worth a watch. Yeah.
I think this movie is Aaron Sorkin at his Aaron Sorkin-ist, and that's not a bad thing in this case. I definitely have gone through phases with Aaron Sorkin where I think he is a genius, and then other times where I'm like, you're just kind of rehashing the same thing over and over again. In this case, I think that style really worked for the story that he was telling and the way that he was telling it in. I know that is kind of the issue that a lot of people have, was that it was maybe a little too quippy for something that's kind of serious, specifically in light of, you know, the year 2020. But I also think that it really worked for me. I thought that breakneck pace was super engaging. Like, the movie starts and I was in, and then it just like runs through like a freight train. So I did really enjoy that high energy. And yeah, I thought it was a well-made movie that came out at exactly the right time, which I will say, I think there are a lot of movies on this list that were timed so perfectly. Like the next one that we're going to talk about, definitely, I think Promising Young Woman and Minari are both really like well-timed releases, and I think Chicago 7 is another one where it was like you could not have planned this better because it is so relevant to the moment.
Yeah, so where is it on your list?
So this one is right in the middle for me. This is number 4 on my list.
Nice, it is my number 4 as well.
Awesome.
All right, so Judas and the Black Messiah, what'd you think?
Let's jump into it. This was another one, much like Trial, that starts and it just goes. I mean, I love so many things about this film, from the look of it, from the score, the performances by Lakeith Stanfield and David Kaluuya are so like spot on, and just the way that they tell this story, I think is new and different. I love that it is set as a 70s crime thriller. Like, it's not just a biopic, it is a 70s crime thriller about real things, and I think the message in it is another example of just how relevant this story is. And it's kind of a bummer that this story is still relevant, but it is, I think it is a powerful film to watch at this time.
I would completely agree. And I know we talked about this, but what was so interesting to me in this film was the split screen time between Kaluuya and Stanfield's characters. I think if I or you or anybody were to approach this script, Kaluuya would get 90% of the screen. I think that's what would be naturally the easy move to go after. But I thought what was so interesting about this film was that we got so much of Lakeith Stanfield. We got so much of the snitch's perspective.
I think the one thing, when I finished the movie, the one thing that I felt like was missing was a deeper relationship between the characters that Kaluuya and Stanfield play. And then I did a little digging on it, and the director talked about how, you know, he had consulted with the families of both of these real life people, and they had a version that they had filmed where there was more of a relationship between those two characters, but when they reviewed that with the family members, they were like, that didn't really happen, and they took that out in the interest of being more accurate. And I was like, you know what, good choice, guys, because I appreciate that kind of, you know, commitment to telling a truthful story versus, you know, a more Hollywoodized version of it.
I think that's a great point, and I think maybe a lot of reviewers need to understand that point, because I saw a lot of stars get taken off of this film for that exact reason. But like you said, I really enjoyed that they went that route.
So where do you have this movie on your list?
I had this one ranked number 2.
I have this one as my number 3.
So we've gone over these lists, you know, and ours are so different from each other. Where does the Oscars go?
This is an excellent question, because I don't know that any movie that I have rooted for has ever won the Best Picture Oscar. So the Academy definitely has different feelings than I do.
Yeah, I definitely would agree. And in making this pick here, I think my only reason is just grounded in the hype. I don't really understand any other reason to propel any of these films to number 1 over the others. So I think I'm just going to throw Nomadland out there, because while it was very near the bottom of my list, it's getting some love right now.
Yeah.
And I think it looks like an unstoppable train.
For me, because it won a Golden Globe, I'm not sure that it's going to win an Oscar. I do think Minari has a really good shot, because I think it has a lot in its favor. I think that Americana feel, I think the artistry of the look and the sound of it, and I think the performances just really come together to kind of check a lot of boxes on, or a lot of boxes that I would hope are on the Academy's list. I think that it has a good shot, so I'm gonna place my bet on Minari.
That sounds awesome. I would love if Minari won, personally.
So those are our Oscar Best Picture picks and predictions. Let us know what you think. Any thoughts on Best Picture noms? Any thoughts on movies that you thought got snubbed this year? Leave us a comment below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and that bell for notifications so you can keep up to date with all of our new Fact Bite episodes. We will come back next week with our thoughts on The Father. That movie comes out on streaming this Friday, but all of the rest of the movies that we've talked about are already available on streaming. Like Nick said earlier, some are on Hulu, some are on Netflix, at least one is on Amazon Prime, and then some of the others you can catch on apps like Fandango or Amazon Prime. So that's what we've got for you today. Thanks for watching.